Thank you, folks, for being at the monthly meeting put on by Massachusetts Climate Action Network of the BBA, that's the Better Building Advocates. And some folks are coming in from different directions, so we don't make any presumptions about your background, your particular interests. The topic this morning, though, is embodied carbon. And our speaker is Jodi Smits Anderson, who is an incredible expert in building and energy, and specifically on embodied carbon, and gave a talk at the recent NESEA conference. And what I'd like to do is just go around and quickly mention, if you would, and we'll do it as quickly as we can, one particular question you might have about embodied carbon. And it could be as simple as, I need to know more, or I have a specific project I'm working on. And you don't have to say more than that. We can get back into specifics later, but if we could just go around very quickly, thank you very much. And Phil, you said you wanted to start off.
Yes, I'm a member of the MCAN board and in the steering committee of Concord CAN, and I am very interested in alternatives to concrete.
Pick one person, please.
And I'm going to pick Mary Dewart.
Yes, I'm on the MCAN board. Thanks for hosting this event. And I'm on Climate Action Brookline, and we're building a new school, a new Pierce school, and how to be ahead of the curve and embodied carbon in the conversation before the school committee takes its stand and moves forward with a new school without necessarily assessing the embodied carbon of the existing school.
Want to pick somebody, Mary?
Oh, I'm sorry. How about Gretchen?
Sure. Gretchen Ellison from Shrewsbury, and my group is Tipping Point 01545. And we have a nice relationship with our municipal government. And similarly to Mary, we expect that the high school is going to be renovated with a significant addition in the next few years. And we'd like to get ahead of the curve and find ways to have the people in charge of that project be familiar with the topic of, embodied carbon, so that they can plan ahead for it, and we can assist them with that. So thank you for having this. I really appreciate it.
Gretchen, great. I'm going to pause for just a second. Anybody else like Gretchen or Mary have a project in mind, more or less like the high schools they're talking about? Anybody else? Okay, Gretchen, go ahead. Pick somebody.
Okay, Debbie. How about Debbie?
Hi. Our town is I don't have a project. We're actively seem to be demolishing our historic buildings, or through just abandoning them and not looking after them. And our town is demolishing one historic barn this year, through as sustainably as possible, but it's been incredibly difficult for the town to do this. And how do we get people to reuse buildings rather than demolish them? And that's towns, it's not just people.
And you want to pick somebody, Debbie?
Oh, sorry. Gosh, I'm trying to see someone who hasn't been already. Sue,
Yeah.
have you been?
Okay.
Sue.
Oh, me. Okay. Hi, I'm Sue Swanson from Bedford Mothers Out Front. Like someone else, we also have good relationships with our town planning board, zoning committee, and all that. But I am not very familiar with embodied carbon, and I'm here to learn from all of you. Thank you. And I choose Ann Wright.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann from the Building Electrification Accelerator and Arlington. And mostly I want to learn as well, including cost. What's the cost differential between non-carbon and embodied carbon?
And Ann, do you want to pick somebody?
Oh, yeah. Let's see, who hasn't gone? Ted from Franklin?
Ted?
I'm Ted McIntyre. I'm on the MCAN board. I guess the interesting question I would have is what the equity perspective on embodied carbon. Is there a connection to environmental justice?
Mm.
And I will pick Tom Elbrecht from Town Green.
All right, thanks. So I'm Tom Abrecht from Gloucester, from Town Green Inc., and former chair of Sustainable Arlington, which was MCAN chapter. I'm fairly new to this topic. I'm curious about whether there's any thought about sort of non-buildings, so things like road construction. We're looking at network geothermal. I'm curious about tearing up streets and if there's an embodied carbon exploration of that. Thanks.
And you want to pick somebody, Tom?
Oh, sorry. Yes. How about Fred Unger?
Yeah. Hi, Fred Bunger, from Town of Wellesley Climate Action Committee, and we're actually part of the town. We're revising our municipal building guidelines to include embodied carbon. So our interest is the basis. For example, we're saying we will use the same thing the state is using or the feds as a basis, and also definitely concerned in costs, because anything we do becomes, okay, so why are you asking me to do something that costs more? And Pat Hanlon?
Hi, I'm Pat Hanlon. I'm from Arlington, one of the co-chairs of Sustainable Arlington. I'm sorry, I can't seem to start my video, but you'll have to just imagine what I look like. Arlington is in an unusual position because of a controversy over the building of a new school, which is just nearing completion now, where opponents for building the school and financing it were relying on embodied carbon. There's a sharp polarization in the town over this, which has become a kind of building new things versus not building things sort of thing. And I'm interested in learning more about the various dimensions of it so that we can move past that and begin to get people on board again to be thinking about the right way of balancing operational improvements in greenhouse gases and embodied carbon, and how it all works without it getting swallowed up by the polarization in our town between people who favor principally building more housing and people who do not.
And Pat, you want to pass it? How about who else is left? Sally Pick.
Sally, I think you may have come in late. We're just saying, introducing ourselves and asking for saying one thing that we're interested in learning about embodied carbon.
Yes, sorry, I had trouble getting in. And then I came in as Fred. My grandfather's name was Frederick. So anyhow, I'm interested in learning the latest on where things are in policy and legislation with embodied carbon, where the legislation is that that MCAN has been promoting, and what new efforts and materials and cost comparisons there are. So whatever is presented will probably be an update for me. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for making this happen.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll just say that Jodi wasn't prepped that she necessarily would be up to date on latest with the legislature, Massachusetts legislature. She works nationally and regionally and in Massachusetts. But in any case, you may get to that, Jodi. But if not, we will have a subsequent session just on that. So I'm brought that up, Sally.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put undue pressure. Whatever you have to say, I'm sure will be engaging. So thank you.
Terrific. Okay, and I'll pick Jane. I don't think you've gone yet.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm not Jane Dye from Holden, and I'm in a group 350 Central Mass and have a compatriot there from Worcester who's really into concrete. And so I wanted to just hang out here and see if I can learn anything about it. It's intriguing.
Richard, you haven't gone yet?
I'm just here. I'm with the MCAN board as well. And I'm just here to learn, to take it all in, be a sponge today.
Terrific. Andy, I don't think you've gone yet.
Hi, good morning. My name's Andy Krasner. I'm from Boston, and I, like Fred, we're trying to get embodied carbon into some of our zoning code, and it would be great to understand the costs and also if there's a specific standard that NBI recommends that we could include.
Great question. Okay. And I think we're narrowing down. Perry says they can't speak. So Perry, if you want to jot up any question in the chat, that'd be great. And let's see, who else hasn't gone yet? Oh, I know, Janet.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janet Bowser on the MCAN board. Jodi, thanks so much for being here today. And I'm just interested in hearing maybe just overall what you see as the major opportunities right now and the challenges, and also the equity angle. How can we focus on reducing carbonization in buildings in EJ communities?
Fantastic. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet? And I'm sure we can take questions as we go, but this is great. Wow, what a range of interests. And of all people I know, Jodi, you could handle it. So Jodi is the expert on embodied carbon. Thank you so much for being here, Jodi. We look forward to your remarks.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks very much. I'm every single one thing made me really excited about this conversation. So I appreciate it. I have tried to list them in the chat. So if you scan that list and you feel like I missed something, please make sure to put it in the chat so we can talk about it. I'm going to give you just a background of a couple of minutes on me, so you know my perspective, and then we'll get into some of these fantastic questions. I currently work for New Buildings Institute. New Buildings Institute is a code and policy, in essence, think tank, but we started to move into code overlays, guidance documents, some thought papers, and we present on where the market's heading. So I think I'm exactly in the right place, which is exciting to me. My history has been, well, I'm an architect. I was actually elevated to fellow of the AIA last year, which was incredibly exciting, and then summarily dismissed from my position 2 weeks later. So it was also kind of a whiplash effect in 2023. But I joined NBI in December of this past year. So the bulk of my career, I started as a designer. I was project manager, private sector, but then I spent 15 years with New York State government as director of sustainability for a large authority in New York State. And that part of that work for 15 years with DASNY, which is the Dormitory Authority, State of New York, was working on greening New York State government throughout New York State and creating kind of the grassroots effort between state agencies that resulted in an updated executive order and ultimately the climate law of the state of New York. So we got together as different agencies and authorities that had never been allowed to work together in the past. Prior to 2007, we weren't really allowed to work together at all. We were almost competitors. And then we had to it took about 10 years to get traction on greening New York State. And then that traction again turned into, along with the world awareness, turned into climate action. And that climate action plan, which is a very strict law, one of the strictest state laws currently for climate action. And then I got engaged in the scoping plan. And throughout that work, and this ties into some of the interest specifically in concrete, the Greening New York interagency team had focused on commodity purchases and writing specifications for how do we get a greener copier, or how do we get a greener car for the fleet. We were very focused on commodities, reducing paper use and defining, non-chlorine bleached, 100% recycled paper, those kind of things. And I suggested that we had evolved enough to start to look at building materials, which are incredibly complex because they interact with other building materials. And no building is like any other building. Every single construction, even if it's foolishly the same exact plan as a building down the street, it's built on a different day with different laborers and different weather patterns. So everything is unique. And the first thing we tackled was concrete. So we created, with a team of about 30 people, a lower carbon concrete specification. And I will include the link at the chat before the link in the chat before the end of this, because it's publicly accessible. And it's what I consider a guidance specification, where it tells you how to reduce the embodied carbon of concrete, what to ask for, how to do the proof mechanism, but is not a requirement per se. And it does also get into the design aspects of concrete slightly. So I'll get into that in more depth in a minute. And then I left New York State government to go back into the private sector. That was a year or so of things happening, which ended up with me leaving the firm last year, mid-year, and then NBI. NBI is focused, as I said, on really, it calls itself a think tank, but it really has been focused for the last 25 years or so on creating new energy codes specifically. But I would say in the last 5 years, it started to move into understanding that codes are limiting and there's a lot more work to be done. And we need to be more aware of the connections to other aspects of code. We are now engaged also in building code. We have an embodied carbon overlay, which is a code overlay. So any municipality can take that code overlay and start to update language in the commercial code for that municipality. Of course, it has to go, this is guidance that has to be coordinated with how your state or how your municipality is legally bound to the accepted state level code. But those are great resources, and I'll make sure to show you some of those too as we go. So that's my history, but my focus is interesting because I believe we look at things in silos to the detriment of actually doing good work. And embodied carbon is absolutely something we have to pay attention to, and I'm fascinated by it. And it touches everything that people have brought up. It touches policymaking, it touches environmental justice, it touches economics, because if we truly want to reduce carbon, we need to move to local production of materials, or more local production. We need to move to the vernacular of the region environmentally, climate-wise. And my ultimate goal is to, this is going to sound really touchy-feely, but is to reconnect human beings to nature so that we're working within her systems and healing her systems as we do the things we think we need to do for our human population. So that's big picture for me. And I'm going to go right down this list, I think. But before I get into the list, do you have any points of clarity that you need about my history or about my perspective? Okay, feel free to write it in chat. Any questions? That's great. Okay, concrete alternatives. The specification, and I'm going to see if I can pull it up really quickly here. I didn't prep this, but I think that it's worth taking a look. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can pull this right up. It's The interesting thing about concrete, being in New York State, I can't type and talk, so just give me 1 second.
Do you want me to share the screen, make you co-host so that you can share your slides, Jodi?
I thought we already tested that. I think I'm able to.
Okay.
Already. So I'm going to get into, there's a website, and I'm going to actually share while I do this so that you guys don't get bored. Maybe that's the way to do this, right? I'm going to say share screen, and this way you'll be able to navigate to it, but I'll put the link in. So hopefully you can now see my second screen.
Yes.
And this is in New York State. Now, I said that New York State did a lot of work. This is the website hosted by Office of General Services that holds all the work that Greening New York committee did. And you can go into here and read reports about how New York State has performed. Executive Order 22 is really pushing the needle. And then we've got the specific items down here. Environmentally preferable purchasing is where the specifications have been adopted and listed. So when I look at all approved specifications, again, mostly commodity based, but the first construction material one is lower carbon concrete. You can click on that and you can use this as a guide for any, I mean, it's totally accessible. And again, it's a supportive guidance, because what it talks about is that we're tasking, you have to task the architects and engineers as well as the suppliers to do this work on embodied carbon in materials. So it first has to be properly specified in any new construction or significant renovation or anything where you're purchasing. You need to know what you're aiming for. And this talks about the different aspects. You can reduce embodied carbon in concrete dramatically and still achieve the structural, the strength levels that are required for whatever project you're talking about. And you can do that in a couple of ways, and they are listed in order of preference. So in this specification, environmental product declarations are called for. Of course, we want the proof mechanism, and we want to build that industry awareness of embodied carbon. Now, just a quick qualifier, EPDs, they're growing tremendously. There was a federal pilot project focusing on concrete, flat glass, steel, and asphalt that has increased the number of EPDs by something like 5,000 EPDs for those materials in the last year and a half. And they are building on that pilot project. And now that's where the federal Buy Clean initiatives exist. And you can also Google Buy Clean federal initiatives or Buy Clean state initiatives and see what's going on in that realm. Again, focused on those 4 materials. But the EPD also covers other aspects of the work. It's not just about the CO2e, the CO2 equivalency of that material or the global warming potential. It's also about other impacts to natural systems that, of course, and this is a gross statement, a big statement, of course, when we adversely impact the environment, we're adversely impacting usually the most impoverished of our constituents. So if we're damaging water systems, if we're if we're creating a situation where we're pumping phosphates into the water systems, we're actually creating an environmental justice issue. So you can use the EPDs to start to talk about those environmental justice aspects as well. The CO2e is a large-scale social impact that is like when we adversely affect something, we're affecting the air that is shared worldwide. When we impact a water system, that's much more local and targeted within at least the aquifer or maybe the river basin. And that can help you understand direct impacts on your own community. For example, so take a look at the EPDs. Back to this spec, set cement content limits. That cement is the biggest burden in concrete. It's the glue that holds it all together, and it's about a it's a one-to-one. Every pound of cement is a pound of emissions in essence. So you can reduce the Portland cement content while meeting the strength levels, because the structural engineer can design by adding pozzolans or SCMs, supplemental cementitious materials that are not cement, like recycled finely ground glass, which is called GGP, or ground glass pozzolans, and those are available in the Northeast. So you can increase your recycling performance by using GGP, and again, I'm all about the co-benefits. So when you add ground glass pozzolan to cement, and let's talk about sidewalk work, for example, outdoor work, you can, the GGP automatically makes the cement a little bit lighter, which actually can improve urban heat island impacts. So you're reducing CO2e, you're encouraging local recycling and accessing a waste product in essence, and not mining cement, and you're lightening your sidewalks. So the third step is the pozzolans, which I just mentioned, and then there's an ability to reduce the paste, and the paste is the stuff between the aggregate. So if you are all cement is local, you're bringing in the aggregate from someplace local. So if you can increase the aggregate, you can decrease the paste. And again, all of this has to be worked out with a structural engineer. And we've got more insights in here about how to achieve that. Then we include in all of these, this is the brilliant part of the Green New York work, is that on every single specification, we kind of set a market signal that says, look, we know we've written this spec based on where the market is, but you should be thinking about these things because they're coming. Or you should think about these things because they're slightly past the use of this spec, but you should constantly keep the larger picture in mind. So this one is very interesting for flat work. It's difficult to extend the cure time on a concrete road bed, for example, because usually roads have to be, they cause disruption, massive disruption, and you want to keep the road closed for as short as time as possible. If you can extend the cure time, you can dramatically reduce the cement use. So these are conversations that should be had. Think about how to celebrate concrete when you use it and expose the structural concrete as the finished material. Something that's not in here that I've learned recently is there is fiberglass rebar available, so you can eliminate the steel content in your structural concrete, which is beneficial for carbon emissions, but it's also beneficial because one of the biggest problems with concrete is water intrusion and rusting of the rebar and the steel support mechanisms within that concrete. So eliminating the steel is a benefit. So this is one of the places, and then we have basic language that goes on every spec about, hey, this doesn't apply as much to concrete, but when you're ordering CMU, concrete masonry units, or bricks, or some other modular unit, there's a habit of buying like 10% over what you need just to cover breakage and future maintenance. Is that something you're actually going to use? Is that something that you really need? Those kind of questions are very important. And of course, a responsible plan for on-site use of any overage from concrete pours. If you know you need an outdoor patio, maybe the overage can be part of the sub-pour for that. Or if you can create forms for paver blocks on site, you'd have your own paver blocks right there ready to go. Things like that. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. So that was a lot about concrete and about the thought process to tap into the environmental justice thoughts. And I'm not going to get into that depth about everything because just the depth of experience I have with concrete is good and solid.
Did you want to take questions just about
Sure, yeah. I see
just
this
about
is
the
new.
concrete? Just about the
Absolutely.
concrete.
EPD, Environmental Product Declaration. It is, I can also pull up a really nice picture of it. Let's see, because I think that's worth looking at. Well, I'll answer the other questions first. So the EPD, actually I won't, because it's all about EPD. All right, let me share this. Again, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm warning you because who knows where I'll end up. No, I'm going to share this one. Let's see if you see that. And I'm going to go, yeah, you do. So I'm going to go right to this slide. Now, this on the left is an example of an environmental product declaration, like the face page. And this is from Climate Earth, another fantastic resource. They have just a how-to primer on how to use EPDs. Now, qualification on this, EPDs are not as common as they should be, but it's an absolutely growing awareness of the need. More and more contracts are calling for environmental product declarations. The policy work that's underway often is starting with, it's kind of like create the awareness and then later we'll set limits. So we're creating the awareness by saying you have to produce EPDs for this many materials. For example, there's work in ASHRAE, which is the creators of the standard that informs energy code at the national level, and therefore all the state codes that are adopted. ASHRAE 90.1 and ASHRAE 189.1. These are considering putting requirements in for you have to produce EPDs for at least 30 materials totaling X% of the cost of the materials in your building. And we're not actually setting limits on the CO2e, on the emissions from those materials yet, but that would be a phase 2. So you can go through this. First, you compare the performance, for example, in concrete, the strength performance between EPDs. If you're a designer, you can then start to choose more effective mixes that have lower emissions. You compare the global warming potential of the components of that. For example, in insulation, anything that's a blowing agent can be a very high global warming potential. New York State has eliminated the use of some blowing agents because they're so egregious. They're like 1,400 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. You have to check the expiration date. The frustration about environmental product declarations is they have a 5-year shelf life because the industry is moving fast. And so you can do the proof mechanism. You have the documentation. If that EPD is 5 years old or older, it is not current to the goals of the industry or the knowledge base of the industry. You have to understand the methodology when you're comparing, just to make sure that there's that they're equitable in what they're reviewing. There's product level EPDs for the entire nation, or it can be regionally specific, or it can be for an actual product by an actual manufacturer. And then you have to compare primary sources, but go to Climate Earth because that's really a great resource. That's the quick and dirty on EPDs. They're a tool, and they're right now, I would say they're less of a compliance tool and more of an awareness tool, but they will become a compliance tool. And that I would expect that's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years at all different levels.
Jodi, can I jump in again, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think on our call, we've got some folks who are professionals and some folks who are citizen advocates, and hope those are broad enough terms. But it seems to me that what you're describing is an evaluation process, or part of the evaluation process, that a design team should be going through and presenting to the client, who could be the municipality.
Mhm.
So if you're on the design team, I can understand that what you're laying out is what they should be doing. If you're on the recipient, if you're the client, if you're evaluating the design team's proposals, you want to try to get them to do this.
Mhm.
But they may or may not be converse. I'm guessing, this is my question now. I'm guessing design teams are all over the map, and
Yeah.
are many or a few ready to talk in these terms?
That's a great question, Fred. So I'm involved with a board level committee for AIA National. And one of the things that's frustrated me about, I'll talk about the architecture industry, is that AIA, I mean, this is a good thing. AIA has a code of ethics, and the code of ethics for quite a long time, I'd say probably 10 years, has said that we have an ethical responsibility to discuss sustainability with our clients. And that was not a rule, that was like a sub rule. So you couldn't be kicked out of AIA for not following that mandate until recently. A couple of years ago, they updated it to say, you have to talk about the environmental impacts of your design decisions with your clients. And that is now a rule. That is an ethical standard for the AIA.
And by the way, are there people in this audience that knew that? Okay, that's good. I wanted to check that. And my question was, I hopefully helpful for everyone here, because we're either
That's great. Yeah.
professional or the layperson. Okay, or both. Some of us are both. Okay.
Yeah, so I think one of the things you can require in any contracts, in a planning group or in a community advocacy, is for the design team, to discuss with the municipality the environmental impacts of the design decisions. Spell that out. And if you want to, you can very easily get on the AIA.org website and find the code of ethics and even point it out to them. I do want to caution you. I think that's one of the reasons I was asked to leave my last firm, because I pointed it out to them. So not every architecture firm is ready to embrace the fact that that is an ethical responsibility. So, because it's work, right? It's different than what we've always done. We know how to do things. It's easy to do things the way we've always known how to do them. We know how to build a school. I see a million of them all the time. I've been designing schools for 20 years. Yeah, 20 years ago, the world was quite a different place. So yeah, keep them to task on that. That's marvelous. And just having that conversation about the environmental impacts of the design choices will start to address some of the questions that have come up. How do we understand building reuse versus, and I hate to use the word versus, how do we understand the benefits of building reuse and the challenges of building reuse related to the ease of new construction, but also the burdens that come with new construction. And having that conversation is tied exactly to that code of ethics, because of the embodied carbon, because of the disruption to the fabric of the community. That's the other thing. As architects and planners, every time you demolish a building, you're impacting the fabric that exists. And that could be a talking point that gets beyond the politics of reuse or not reuse because of carbon. It could be, hey, our downtown has a beautiful streetscape, and that company that's coming in wants to demolish that brownstone / warehouse, whatever it is, that's right on the sidewalk. And the new zoning will require a parking lot in front. So how do we preserve the fabric of our community and use that building as an opportunity to do that? So that could get beyond that. All right, so I saw something else. Thank you for putting in the AIA link, Phil. That's awesome. All right, I'm going back up to the questions. I would say that there's another slide I want to share here just for a quick flash on it. there we go, screen 2. So this is just it's a hierarchy of carbon management. And instead of getting into the details of we want to reduce carbon by whatever number, if we start to shift our thought processes a little bit, we can get there without that often perceived as egregious reporting and oversight, right? So the go-to, and I'm going to start at the bottom of this triangle, the offset is really the quick and dirty way to do it. And we're at a point in the industry where buying offsets has reached its maximum market potential. It was a way to start the ball rolling. It started with renewable energy. Oh, let's buy renewable energy credits, and then we are really doing what we can. But until the renewable energy credits started tying directly to development of new renewable energy, it wasn't really moving the market. And now we're even past that to trying to maximize on-site in a lot of policies. So, and I know that's operational carbon, but it's the whole carbon picture. And it's the same thing with embodied carbon, buying offsets or repairing things after the fact. For example, I have a healthy suspicion, I'm going to be very upfront about this, about any concrete that says it's carbon sequestering concrete. In doing the numbers on the carbon sequestering concrete, it's not a lot of sequestration. We need every single percentage point, certainly, but don't spend your money there. Spend your money on reducing the concrete use, right sizing the elements, choosing other structural materials that may be lower carbon, like mass timber, if appropriate. Exposing the concrete so you're not having 3 other layers of material on top of it. Whatever you can do other than sequestration. Sequestration should be in concrete is a cost additive approach. So replace high carbon sources or activities with lower carbon solutions. So that's like the swap out of materials holistically, like saying this structural system can be reused, or this structural system does not have to be steel. And then, so reuse and reduction is right sizing. We have a tendency, in a quick structural example, and the structural industry is getting on board with this. We have always sized the columns and beams and then chosen the largest profile and just made every single joist, for example, that same larger size. But the floor does not function in that way. So you can right size individual components, which takes more brain power, but reduces the materiality of the building. And that's impactful. And then avoid carbon intensive activities. So one of the things that's often not discussed in demolishing projects or in clearing sites for new construction is, and I'm ashamed that I don't have the actual data on the emissions, but every time we move soil, we're releasing significant CO2e, the methane and the encapsulated CO2 in the soil is being disrupted and released. So every time we can reduce on-site activities, we can choose to maintain trees or existing plantings. Every time we do simple things like mulching our garden and covering the open wounds in the earth, we're actually reducing carbon emissions. So, all right, what other questions here? I'm going to close out that. I want to quickly show you, because I talk a lot. Shame on me. I hope I'm getting to the basics here. I just wanted to show you this one screen from NBI. And this is some of our code and policy work. And one of the things to show you is this embodied carbon building code. So this is something that you can dive into and you can understand how you can start to include embodied carbon awareness into building codes in your municipality or your state. There is an existing building decarbonization code which is about how to address existing buildings through, when they're being renovated. And then the other one that doesn't sound like it has anything to do with embodied carbon, but it certainly has something to do with carbon emissions as a whole and preservation of health and well-being in a community, is the Heat and Urban Heat Island Code Overlay, which is talking about how to protect our city residents in urban heat from the urban heat island impact, and understanding especially cool roofs and cool walls. And it starts to touch a little bit on interstitial spaces, the spaces between buildings. We're starting to get into zoning, so that'll be interesting when we talk about some zoning overlays as well. All right, and I'm going to stop sharing there. So that's newbuildings.org. There are quite a lot of resources there. I'm scanning. Cost differentials. I'm going to touch on that for like 2 minutes, and then we're going to see what I've missed. Cost differentials. In the case of, for example, the lower carbon concrete spec, if you're bringing in a pozzolan that is not readily available, like that ground glass pozzolan, GGP, that might not be available locally, or there might be a higher demand on that. There might be an incremental cost to that. One of the problems with talking about the cost differential is that and you know this, the reduction of embodied and operational carbon, that burden of doing it is on the project or the individual design team or the municipality, but the benefits are societal. So you can't really do a cost analysis that makes sense. I'm a huge advocate of municipalities, and New York State did this. They had they picked, gosh, it's got to be 8 years ago. They set a number, the cost of carbon, and they didn't put it into their specs. They didn't put it into any of their mandates, but they said this is the number that you should use for planning purposes to help decide what mechanical systems you're going to be using. And it can be used in the same way to make decisions about what structural systems or what finish systems or what materials you're going to use in a project. If you set a cost on carbon, and it's starting to happen in a lot of places, and it could be totally messy. The range is probably from $25 a ton to $250 a ton, but you can pick a cost for your municipality or your project even to do a weighted comparison of how things, and that would be much more true to the true life cost of that decision. So that might be something to bring in. I would say that since one of the best aspects in reducing embodied carbon in a whole building is reducing layers of material, that's a no cost solution. My dog needs to go out. I'm still talking. Oh, she's sorry. No, come on. Oh, this is mortifying. I should have warned you guys. I have a very old dog.
Yeah.
So I posted the link to the New Buildings Institute in the chat. And I encourage everyone else to put in links as we're going along.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh, I'm alone in the house today, and I forgot that I should have mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was fun. She's outside. I'll have to let her in a second.
So we want to wrap up soon. Do you want to see if there's any so-called burning questions left? Because you've hit on so many of the questions that people posed at the beginning. Do people want to just raise hands if they've got something that they want Jodi to address? Gretchen.
You know, the Mass School Building Authority has to they fund large school projects like 50%. And so, for example, our town has been applying through them for approval to build to renovate and expand an older high school. I mean, it seems like an agency like that, they're definitely moving towards ground source heat pumps in approving schools, which is really great. I wonder if they're aware of embodied carbon in the specifications they could create for towns to build schools.
I don't know. That's a great question.
So let me just jump in and say that we can have a subsequent meeting, maybe not next month, but at some point with Mass CEC, Bev Craig, who can bring us up
great.
on the specifics. And Gretchen, sorry, I didn't mean to put you off, but just to let you know that we should address Massachusetts specifics, both the legislation, as I said, but also specs and MSBA. Sure. Any other last minute any other questions that you'd really like to get addressed while Jodi is here? Folks, just raise your hand. Terrific. And Jodi, so let me cycle back. Let me be selfish and cycle back to
Sure.
what I maybe was getting at. So when you and I see each other at the NESEA conference, we imagine at least that most of the professionals there can or are trying to do what you're describing. But do you have a sense for, given the whole range of architects, engineers out there who might be working on projects, that this audience would be interested in? Do you have any sense of what proportion of professional design teams
Are ready for this?
are well versed, are ready for this? There you go, are ready for
Oh,
this.
wow.
Are on
So
top of it.
Yeah, that's challenging questions, right? Because I hang out with people that talk about this stuff. So, but I can tell you that that, for example, AIA, some of the conversations I've seen in their knowledge communities, it's like everything else in the world, right? 20% get it right out of the gate. 20% are so resistant that they're offended by the whole thought of change. And then it's the 60% in the middle. So I would say, regarding embodied carbon, I have only seen traction in the industry in the last maybe 5 years. But the acceleration of that traction is really exciting to me. I would say probably 30% of the industry is well versed, and I would say probably 65% are aware that embodied carbon is a focal point.
Right. So by the way, 30% is huge. I think a few years ago, you might have said 3%.
I know.
So 30% is huge. That means there's a chance that we can find them. And I think, going back to many of you thinking of the work that you're doing, I think that's the upfront action, really, is find the design team that is versed. And if you're stuck with an existing design team, push that they get well versed.
Yeah. And that the design team has to help you understand the environmental impacts of the design decisions. Put that right in your request for proposal. Put that right in your discussion at your team meetings. There's nothing that moves the needle faster than having open conversations about what you don't yet know.
Cool. Jodi, this is fantastic. Anybody else want to chime in with any last thoughts? Fred?
Yeah, I certainly second that. I think key to getting our schools at net zero was right in the request for proposals that the bidders, people working on the proposals, had to provide us the best method of getting to net zero.
That's awesome.
So if you do that up front, you quickly sort out the people that can't do it, and the people that might not be able to do it will bring on the people that will help them do it.
Yeah. And moreover, by putting that right in the request for proposal, you're sending the market signal that'll get those people who have no awareness saying, holy crap, we need to learn something in order to propose on things. And so you're actively moving the market through that question, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm a big fan of reminding myself that I might be that grain of rice that tips the scales. So ask the question, put it out there. That might be that grain of rice, right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful, Jodi. And I, to the extent I know each of you, you are each that grain of rice. I know that. This is the Massachusetts Climate Action Network. These are activists.
Beautiful.
Stuff to happen. Any other last thoughts, folks?
I put my contact information in the chat. Please don't hesitate. I am learning about newbuildings.org and the work we do. And part of my mandate is to connect more deeply with the entire Northeast in that work, to know what's needed so that we can start to do the overlays. We can find the people who need our insights. So yeah, hit me up.
Thank you very much, Jodi.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming here this morning and sharing expertise with this audience. Thank
And
you
now
so
I
much.
get to clean up after my dog.